Well, great. Welcome back, everyone. I know I've had a great day, an exhausting day, and a day when where I've been inspired. And days like this, I wish I had a library to go back to tomorrow to initiate some of the great ideas I got. So I've done a lot of talking today. I really want you guys to do some of the talking, and Steve has enabled all of your microphones. So maybe the best way to do this before we get some final thoughts from our hosts and sponsors is to just go around and raise your hand. You can see very underneath your name there is a hand raising icon, and if you want to share something that is a takeaway, please just raise your hand and we'll call on you. And I just got a word from Shannon that she can't get into the room, so I'm going to go help her. Be right back. In the meantime, would anybody like to share a takeaway from the day?
So feel free to raise your virtual hand and we'll just let you go. Or if you're brave, just click on that microphone, the talk button that's below the video images, and you can grab the mic. Ms. Kowalski says, a motivational evening of reflection, refocusing, and inspiration during a challenging professional year. Thanks so much. I saw a tweet go by that said, the best conference I've never physically been to.
That's the funniest comment I've ever heard.
I thought that was very clever. Lisa says, written so many notes from my Imagining Library Spaces. Great presentation. Peggy George, who gets revved up quite a bit. What a terrific contributor. Hard to slow down and reflect.
Yeah, I completely understand that. And Peggy, thank you so much for keeping us up with the links. You really made a major contribution today.
Joyce, can I ask the audience a question?
Yes, I'm going to mute for a minute.
Oh, no. So if you attended more than one session today, would you raise your virtual hand? That's the third icon over the hand icon.
Lots of hands being raised.
So at least 15 people attended more than one session today. That's terrific. If you attended more than two, if you attended 3 or more sessions, would you keep your hand up? The others, you can lower your hand if you unclick to say that you didn't attend 3 or more. Still about the same number. Who thinks they attended the most sessions today besides Joyce and me and Ross and Britten and Shannon?
I think Peggy's a rock star. She didn't miss a single one.
Oh, way to go, Peggy. I think you get an award. Do you need me to help Shannon, Joyce? I think Joyce is helping Shannon. Okay, so any other comments from today? The great takeaways, things that you would want to share?
You know, the one that I have is that, and I keep thinking about this, there's no textbook for modern practice. We have our standards, we have our school mission or our school vision, we have our library mission and our vision, but aside from those restraints, which aren't really restraints or constraints, we can invent so much. We can look at the needs of our communities and we can address them. We can be inspiring in a way that perhaps classroom teachers really don't have the freedom to be. We can be spaces where kids can do nearly anything that's meaningful in terms of learning. And I think what I've discovered over all these many years is that you do not need to wait for anybody's permission. Just hit the start button. If it makes sense for learning, if you know it's going to be good for your community, if you know that no one else is going to do it, and that is very possible in many school cultures, that you can be the leader. You can lead from the center, and you have the power, you have the implicit power to make change. And I think that everybody who spoke today was an example of that. They are absolute leaders in their school communities. They do not have the explicit power as an administrator, but they are possibly the most influential people in their school buildings. They are the people that those students will remember for years and years and years, and they're making an indelible difference on the lives of those young people. And so my big takeaway is that across all of what I heard today.
I think the thing that I found is I've been energized by the comments in the chat. You hear these stories on a daily basis, but yet to see the folks who have participated all day today really take away valuable lessons and want to implement them tomorrow in their classrooms and libraries is awesome.
Do we have any other hands raised?
I think those were for my questions, but if anybody would like to take the mic and say something, please just click on the talk button. So Joyce, we heard from Ross about agency, and we've heard that word several times today. A word that I didn't hear too much was privacy, and I'm wondering how much that plays into the larger story of libraries going into the future, especially teacher librarians and in the K-12 environment.
I think we're all concerned about privacy, and we're careful about the software that we have our learners engage in, especially those children who are under 13. But I think what is different about the library world is that we're also concerned about intellectual and access. And in many cases, we are the only people in our school building who are really concerned about an open internet and not restricting creativity and learning with the tools that are available. And so very often we are advocating for use of the software that we've carefully considered. I think that we're all really concerned about the platforms on which our kids play, but there's definitely a balance. We're looking at COPPA compliance for sure, but we're also afraid that being overly fearful is going to restrict learning experiences. I know there are people in the room who are much more knowledgeable about this area than I am, possibly Michelle. Is there somebody who would like to speak to the issue of privacy, who knows a lot more than I do?
I think my question is, as we move towards collaborative spaces and making and all of these things, and we've had this conversation before, is the library still the place of individual intellectual freedom, or do we need to be looking for other avenues for that?
I'm not sure I understand, Steve. Of course it is. Can you explain a little bit more?
No, I guess I mean that only in the most positive of ways, but that sort of personal intellectual freedom and the opportunity to explore intellectually. How do we keep that in mind as our spaces become less about privacy and quiet book learning and more about collaborating? Oh
my goodness, I was going in a completely different direction. Yeah, I think that these places, and if you look at the Hunt Library, you'll see that there are multiple types of use. There are places in our spaces that are all about nesting and quiet, and then there are places that are hubs of activity. I think that most of us are concerned about carving out different types of spaces for multi-purpose activities. We're also looking at the ability to be flexible in our spaces, to move things around when we have a big community event, to have furniture on wheels, to be able to move the boards around. But I'm a couple of years ago, I gave kids video cameras at the end of their experience. It was kind of like one version of my senior exit interview. And I called it My Space, My Library, and I had them walk around with these cameras. And what was really interesting was seeing the space from the lens of somebody else, because very often, and Carolyn Foote talks about this a lot, we don't see the space through other people's eyes. And what I discovered was that these kids had their own little private offices, that they thought of, a square foot of library landscape was their own, and it was where they escaped and where they found their little private space, where they'd often see a visitor or two, but it was their private space. That although I didn't like study carrels all that much, there were several kids who would often escape to those spaces. So yeah, I think that we need to be sensitive to the idea that when we have all this activity around us, there are these kids, and all of us from time to time have different needs, and we want our space to be flexible. So I'm thinking that's what you were referring to, not the legal issue of privacy in Google and software companies.
No, but I think they all interestingly wrap together, right? Which is how does somebody explore intellectual ideas that maybe they're not ready to share with others, or maybe social pressure would cause them to not want to explore, but the library has typically kind of guarded. This was a great day. I mean, that was just the one question I had, and I wondered if maybe I'd missed something. But please, let's have some other comments and any other ideas or takeaways you had from the day.
I have just been totally inspired by the whole event, Steve and Joyce and everyone. I think it is just so interesting that, when we started at, 3:30 this afternoon, it feels like light years away almost. And what was totally fascinating for me is that in giving my introductory remarks around the idea of visible learning, talking about ideas of adding value, innovation, sustainability, inquiry, building community, leadership and evidence, those key words that are at the heart of my thinking, I had not at that point even looked at any or heard any of the presentations, and yet these key words were so alive and well. I loved the session on engaging with evidence, Judy talking about leadership, the whole focus of Matthew and Sherry on inquiry, the building of sustainable intellectual spaces. I've just been totally inspired, and I love how each of the presenters have brought us back to some of these core ideas which are part of sustaining the future. A marvelous audio book has been created today, and I hope that we can get these inspiring practices into the hands of every school library student, into the hands of every teacher educator, because we really have touched on the essence of the future of libraries, and that is visible learning. It comes back to engaging students in constructing both an intellectual, personal, social, cultural pathway that is bigger than themselves, yet they are such an important part of that whole, I think Judy summed it up very nicely. It's not just about lifelong. because in many respects that focuses on the individual. It's about life-wide, and life-wide means the interaction, engagement, and the building of a shared community. So, you know, I've just been totally inspired.
Britten, any final thoughts before we close up?
No, I think it was an awesome opportunity for all of us to get together and to share ideas. And really, there are so many amazing stories going on in each of your schools, and I encourage you to use forums like this to share them.
Thank you, Britten, for your continued support of Libraries and Learning, and thanks, Ross and Sizzle, for our sponsorship today. Steve, do you want to close us up and maybe mention tomorrow? This has been a great day. I'm hoping that we'll be able to do it again next year. And if you haven't presented, let's consider contributing next time around. Steve? Did Ken want to say something? I saw a microphone. No?
So we do have 2 more really fun days ahead. If you're in New Zealand, it does go into Friday, but for those of you in the Western Hemisphere, we are Wednesday, Thursday. Hey, a huge thanks to Ross and Joyce from Sissel and to Britten from Follett for making this day possible. This was really a blast, and I'm so glad that we've done it again. Thanks to both of those organizations and to those individuals. And Joyce and Shannon, thanks for stalwart moderating today. Most appreciated. Clapping for everybody. I hope you do join us. The recordings have started to go up on the site, and everything tomorrow and the day after is recorded as well. And all those recordings go up pretty quickly, and they are free. So have a great couple of days, and have a great fall. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, Steve, for allowing us to be part of it. Fabulous.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
All right.
Good night, all.
Bye, all.